Gordon here. Happy Tuesday. Welcome back. Thanks for watching yet again. And as we jump into today's message, do you guys remember the word YOLO? Do you remember that really cool word that people used to use a long time ago when they were really excited about something when it came time to do it? Maybe you don't even remember what the word YOLO means. Maybe it's so old and uncool now that nobody uses it anymore that you don't even remember the word YOLO. All right. It at one point was the word that if you were cool and you knew what was going on and you were hip and you were part of the in crowd, you would use the word YOLO. Like it was the word yeet. Although the word yeet's not even cool anymore, even though I'm wearing it on a shirt right now. But YOLO at one point used to be the word, it stood for you only live once. And what it meant was if it came time for you to make a decision, the whole idea and the point behind the word YOLO was you would say it by just saying like, I'm going to go for it. You only live once. Like don't waste this moment. Don't waste this second. Okay. It was like, if you're going to do something crazy, if you're going to jump out of a plane, just say YOLO, going for it. Okay. You only live once. If you were to at school, you saw your crush from across the room and you're like, man, she doesn't even know I exist. I've never even talked to her before. All right, I'm too scared, but YOLO, I'm gonna go for it. Okay, you would go for it. All right, and you'd probably get turned down, but who cares? You went for it. Okay, and then if you were like, man, I got to impress my crush now because I don't know actually how to talk to her in person, so I'm gonna jump in my dirt bike over my house. All right, and say YOLO. Going for it. All right, that was the idea behind YOLO. Okay, and now nobody says it anymore because it's no longer a cool thing. But that was the idea. That was the point behind YOLO. If Alex, our leader Alex, was working in youth ministry back then, he probably would have gotten YOLO tattooed on his fingers instead of yeet. Okay, but that was what it was. That's what it meant. Okay, and the problem with this YOLO idea, when it comes to the Bible and when it comes to the church, is that, like I said, the whole idea behind it was you only live once. All right, don't waste this opportunity. Don't waste your life. Don't waste this moment. Okay, don't live with regret. Okay, but the problem is when you read the Bible, you start to see a picture of that's not necessarily the case. You don't only live once, all right? Once this life ends, if you're a Christian or you see as a person that life doesn't actually end, okay? In fact, the true saying here is you're right, you only live once, but that once, it lasts for forever. Okay? It's you only live forever, which that I don't know what that is. Yolf? That doesn't sound nearly as cool as YOLO. But the point being, as Christians, we should change our perspective. We should change our mindset to, it's not that we only live once and once we're dead. But we only live once, and that once is for eternity. And we have this short time here on earth to decide what it is we're going to live for. We have this short time on earth to decide, am I going to live for God and am I going to live for an eternity in heaven or am I not? And this time on earth, in a way, yeah, YOLO, don't waste it. Don't make every second count, but make sure that it's not just for you. It's for an eternity in heaven that you're living for. And it's this idea that we get into today. And the parable that we're going to look at in our summer hit series, where we've been going through the parables of Jesus, it's this idea. It's this idea of don't waste what you've been given right now. Don't waste this opportunity. Don't waste this moment. Okay, this YOLO principle, okay? And so as we jump in, I want to preface with this. This is the question that Jesus is asked as he answers with this parable, okay? Open to Matthew chapter 24. Matthew chapter 24, verse 3 is where we're going to read the question that Jesus is asked, and then we'll skip forward and we'll read the parable in response, okay? Matthew chapter 24, verse 3. Matthew is the first book of your New Testament. And it says this, okay, Matthew chapter 24, verse 3, he's asked this question. It says, as Jesus sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately saying, tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? So the question that Jesus is asked before he tells this parable today is his disciples come to him and they say, Jesus, tell us when you're going to come back. Tell us when the end of the world is going to be, when the end times are going to come. Could you tell us a nice little date, all right, the year, the time, the month, whatever. Give us some information on when you're going to return, on when the end times are going to be, okay? We want to be prepared. We want to be ready. We want to know when it's coming. And instead of just answering with a nice little all right, here's the date, here's the time, here's the location, make sure you're here, don't be late, this is what you can bring. No, instead, Jesus answers in not the most clear way. Instead, he answers in the form of a parable. So skip to chapter 25 now, verse 14. Matthew 25, verse 14, he answers with this parable and says, "For it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted to them his property." Again, does this sound familiar? It sounds very similar to the parable that we read last week, right? The parable of the wicked tenants. The parable where there's a man who builds a vineyard and he goes off to another country and he leaves his vineyard in charge of some tenants. Okay, and the reason we're doing these parables back to back is because they are very similar. Okay, but last week's parable looks at what it means to give God what is his, to give God what is owed to him, to give God what is his, which is us. He created us, he made us, therefore we are his, and we are to give back to him. Okay, and it deals with the question of what are you holding back from God? What in your life are you not giving to him? Today's parable almost adds on to that idea. Okay, it almost takes it a step farther. Okay, so it says, there's a man going on a journey. He calls his servants and he entrusts to them his property. Right? It's important to see that it is his property. It is the master's property. It's not somebody else's property. It's not the servant's property. It's his property. Okay? And so I want you to get this idea of, it's not this idea of once it's given to the servants, it now becomes their property. No, it's the master's property. Okay? It's like as kids, when you try to lock your parents out of the bedroom, okay, when you're mad at them, when you're angry, right, when you're having one of your moody teenager moments, okay, and you slam the door of your bedroom, you lock them out, and nope, you can't come in my bedroom, right? This is my bedroom. What's the typical parent response? Okay, my dad would always say, "No, excuse me, did you build this bedroom? Did you pay for this bedroom? All right, do you pay the bills on the house? Do you pay for the..." And he'd go into his long dad rant, all right? And now I'm sure a lot of you are rolling your eyes right now because you know exactly what I'm talking about, because your parents have done the same thing to you, okay? Because your parents quickly explained to you that no, it is not your bedroom because you didn't pay for it. You didn't build it. You didn't make it happen, okay? You don't pay the bills. It's actually your parents' bedroom. They just let you live in it. And I'm sure you've heard that rant before from your parents, okay? And as a teenager, it's the most annoying thing in the world to hear, okay? It is the last thing you want to hear. And sometimes they do that with your stuff that you own for your hobbies. So oh, did you buy that practice gear for yourself? No. Did you buy those clothes for you? No, those are mine. All right, I just let you use them. And it's the cliche parent saying, okay? But it gets the point across of, even though this master has given his servants these things, it's still the master's property. It still belongs to the master. Okay? Carry on. Verse 15. To one servant he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. You might ask, well, what does talents mean? In this time period, it did mean literally money, okay? It was a form of money, okay? So he gives each servant a different part of his income, his cash, what he's got saved up. He says, here's 5 for you, 2 for you, 1 to you. And I think the easy part that many people get caught up on in this parable is, well, how come every servant didn't get the same amount of money? How come each servant got different amounts? That's not fair. What the heck's going on? How come it wasn't all equally spread out? That's not necessarily the point of this parable. I don't want us to get caught up today on the fact that not every single one got an equal amount. The point being made here is each one did get an amount. Each one did get an opportunity. And for us, it's describing how, as we as people, No person is created with the exact same abilities, with the exact same skills, with the exact same talents. I mean, the fact of the matter is, there's just people in this life who are more naturally gifted and talented at things than other people. Right? How many of you know those types of people who it just seems like they're good at every single thing they do? Okay, it's like sports. They got it. They're also super musically gifted. They got it. They're also really good at school. Okay, they're super good with people. All right, they're really good looking, and it's just super annoying because you're like, this person's really good at everything. All right, give me something that they're not good at. The fact of the matter is, not everybody's created with the exact same abilities, with the exact same talents, with the exact same gifts. Everybody is created different. The thing, though, is that every single person still has opportunity. Every single person still has something that they can use to serve God. Every single person has something given to them from God meant to serve Him. All right, that's the point being made here. Is each one, although the amounts are different, each one has an opportunity. And for us, we need to step back sometimes and realize that we have an opportunity to serve God. We have stuff given to us by God, made and specifically given to us to serve Him with. Or you might be going, well, I'm just a 12-year-old in Ramona, and I don't know what the heck I can do to serve God. Or I'm just 13 or 11 or however old you are. I don't know what I have to serve God with. I'm just not really that special of a person. The fact of the matter is that's not true at all. If you think about your life, if you think about the house you have, the clothes on your back, the fact that you don't have to worry about where your food's going to come from, the fact that you have the ability to have a phone, to have connection with people, the fact that you live in a very nice area of this world with a lot of opportunity, that is a blessing in itself right there. That is a platform in itself right there. You have influence. You have people around you that you can have an influence on for God. You have the ability to use your gifts and talents to continually get better at them, to someday maybe have a career in that area, to go to school for those things, to influence every person that comes in contact with you, what you've been gifted in, what you have been given by God to serve Him with. That's the fact of the matter. That's the truth of it. So now we carry on to see what these guys do with the talents. It says in verse 16, he who had received the 5 talents went at once. Pay attention to that. It says at once. He didn't hesitate. He didn't think about it. He didn't pray about it. He went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he who had 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. So we see the response of the 3 servants. The one with 5 makes 5 more. The one with 2 makes 2 more. But the one with 1, he goes and he just buries it in the ground. And again, it's another part of parables where we've talked a bunch about this so far in the parable series, where it kind of sounds ridiculous. You go, who goes and buries their money? All right, like if you get given cash from your grandma for your birthday, all right, you don't go out to your backyard and bury it. Right? Chances are you spend it immediately. You're like, I'm going to the mall. I'm buying what I've been dreaming of for a long time. Or maybe you do save it, but you're saving it with the intention of getting to a point where you can buy something amazing later on. But this servant just goes and buries it in the ground. All right? And we see the master's response when he returns. It says, now after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here I have made 5 talents more. His master said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also, who had 2 talents, came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here I have made 2 talents more. His master said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over more. Enter into the joy of your master. We'll pause there. We'll get to the guy who buried his in a second. But we see the key to the first 2 servants who were entrusted with something is they understood their purpose. They understood the reason they had been given something. They understood that it was still his property, not their own. They understood that what they had been given was given to them by the master and stayed the master's. They knew they'd been given an opportunity. And we see they made the most of their opportunity. They used their gifts, their talents, and they served the master with them. And when he returned, they said, "Here, it's all yours. I'm giving it back to you. I'm using what you gave me for you." And we see the response of the master is, "Well done, good and faithful servant," which is a reference later on to what Jesus is going to say to the followers of Christ when they stand in the kingdom of heaven at the judgment seat. For those that have followed him well, he's going to say, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You may now enter the kingdom of heaven." It's a reference to that. And he says, "Because you have been faithful with a little, I will give you more. Enter into my joy." You see, it works out well for those servants because they used their talents to serve whose they rightfully were. They were given more. All right, more opportunity was given to them because they knew who it belonged to in the first place. Verse 24 says, "He also who had received the 1 talent came forward, saying, 'Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours.' But his master answered him, 'You wicked and slothful servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I scatter no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers. At my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who had 10 talents. For to everyone who has more will be given more, and to he who will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.'" End of parable. We sit here and we go, "Dang, I do not want to be the last servant," because he comes and he goes, "Master, I know who you are. I know your nature, and this is what I did. I basically did nothing with what you gave me other than lose it all. I just held on to it, and I'm giving it back when you return." And for most of us, we go, "Well, how come that's such a bad response? Like, it doesn't sound like that big of a deal. It's not like he spent it all." But the point being is he did nothing with it. And he knew the nature of his master. That's the incriminating evidence of the story, is he knew who his master was, and yet he still did nothing. He knew who the talent belonged to, and yet he still did nothing. Last week, the purpose of the parable was to show how sometimes we can rebel directly against God, and we can go, "God, I'm not going to give you what we know is yours. I'm going to hold on to parts of my life, and I'm going to refuse to give it back to you." The point of this parable is a call out to us who call ourselves Christians, and yet we do nothing with what God has given us. We're comfortable. We don't want to work too hard. We don't want to talk to that person who we know so desperately needs to hear God's word, but it's uncomfortable. We don't want to do it. We don't want to use our gifts and talents for God. Not that we're holding on to them for ourselves, but because we just don't want to put in the work and the effort it takes. We're afraid. We're fearful. We don't want to step out of our comfort zone. We don't want to go too far. We don't want to embarrass ourselves. We don't want others to think down on us because they know we're a Christian. It's all those reasons that many people in the church, many people who call themselves Christians, waste the talents, waste the gifts God's given them because they don't want to take that next step. And that's the purpose of the parable this week. We see that the servant who wasted his talent did it out of fear and selfishness. In a way, it was how sometimes we as Christians go, "I don't want people to know I'm a Christian. I don't want to put in the work and the effort it takes to live this way because I'm afraid, because I'm selfish." That's the reasoning behind it. And we see that the master takes what is given to him and gives it to the one who has 10. And you go, "Well, that's not fair. Like, come on." But the point being, for us at the end of this life, like I said, our time of life here is we choose what we're living for is an eternity in heaven. We see When we get to the end of this life, those who have followed God, who have lived for God, they're going to be given the kingdom of heaven. They're going to be given more. And those that chose not to, what little they had, what gifts and talents that they had in the beginning from God is going to get taken away. And it's heavy and it's scary to think about, but it's the point being made in this parable. Jesus is saying, don't waste what I've given you. In James chapter 1, verse 22, it says, be doers of the word, not just hearers, meaning don't just hear the information, don't just hear this sermon that I'm telling you, don't just read the Bible and hear it and have the knowledge in your brain, but do something with it. Make the most of what God's given you. Make the most of the opportunity, big or small, make the most of it. Right? That's the purpose of this parable. The question last week that I asked was, what are you holding back from God? The question this week is, what are you not using for God? A small difference, but it calls out two different types of people. One that is in rebellion to God, and the other one that's just maybe being lazy or not willing to use what God's given them for God. It's that YOLO idea of you only live once. Well, the fact of the matter is you only live forever. So how are you living? How are you setting yourself up to live forever? Are you using what God gave you for God? Think about that. Hope you have a great small group discussion. Miss you guys. Hope to see you soon.